So I think it was around about 2006 or 2007 when I was completing my roles body of work. I stumbled on this exhibition in Graaff-Reinet of the Johannesburg Station Panels by Pierneef at the Pierneef Museum, and I spent the whole afternoon in the place and was absolutely taken by these absolutely fantastic phantasmagorical landscapes of the South African sites around South Africa. And to me they looked a little bit like manga cartoons. The cool thing about where I saw them first, the Johannesburg Station Panels, wasn't in the Joburg station. It was in this a small wooden museum in the Karoo, and I got to be really close to these, and they're about 1 meter by 1 meter in real life, these paintings. And when I stood in front of them, it was basically obvious to me that I was going to end up going to these places. It was just a matter of time of how I found my way there. I had to do the obvious, and that was to buy a square format camera, which was way before the days of Instagram. So I used a 120 roll film, Yashica Flex and Rolleiflex. I got 2. I actually got that camera from a friend. My friend Inga Prince paid me for in camera. I assisted her on a fashion job, and she bought me a camera as my payment. So she was one of my first patrons and benefactors for this project. And I actually had a friend whose parents lived in the Swartberg Pass in Prince Albert, and so I got a camera and I drove off. I thought it would be a super simple, easy exercise of finding these sites, the Premier Mine and Neisner Heads, and easy peasy. There's the Hermanus Old Harbour, also a relatively easy one to get to. So I packed my bags, I got in the car, and I went to the Hermanus Old Harbour. The problem with this, and what I discovered with Pierneef, was that he was, number one, a plein air painter. So what he used to do is he used to sit in the environment and make painterly sketches of pieces of the environment, and then he would take all of those watercolor sketches and he composed those beautiful landscapes in his studio, right? And I didn't know this, so I'm going there to photograph it as it was. In fact, you have to be in a hovercraft to be able to get Pierneef's image. So what I started to do then is I started to think, what am I going to do? And everybody was saying to me, just use Photoshop. And I was like, why? That's so obvious, right? So I just continued with the project of seeking out access to different sites. This is the Premier Mine that you saw just now on top of Hermanus Old Harbour. And I did this simple exercise of taking a photocopy or a print of Pierneef's painting to the site and seeing what I could find. Then I started to become really interested in his process of plein air painting, and I started to think, what if I started to work in plein air photography? And so I got 3 digital cameras and 3 tripods, and I went and I sat in the environment for 16 hours with the 3 cameras, or in fact that's 2 cameras. Here's the 3 cameras in the Swartberg Pass, that's the Premier Mine, and I mapped the light from dawn until dusk. So essentially I did these light studies, shifting light studies. I became really interested in how optical typical perspective shifts when you're looking through three cameras set at, I think it was 50 to 30 mil lenses, looking out at the landscape, gathering this information that he had taken and compressed into a square composition. And what was so beautiful about the images that I took, basically I sat in the landscape with a timer, and then every 5 minutes I took a photograph. Then I would wait 5 minutes, take it again, from I think it was 12 to 16 hours depending on the length of the day at the given site. And then those were put onto digital photo frames, and they became photographic plein air project, or I would say plein air painting, but plein air photography. But then they started to talk about something else, because Pierneef is the kind of grandfather of, or seen as one of the white grandfathers of South African landscape painting or South African landscape art making. And I loved the fact, similarly to my Rolls work, that I'd put myself into his position, into his role, and I'd gone to the sites, but I was a different generation. I was a different gender, different generation, and I came with a very different gaze. And the gaze that I approached the project with was I was really interested in how it actually looked in comparison to painting through photography, but also like changes in the environment and things that marked a more contemporary environment. I realized after a while that I needed to work with visual tropes. So, in quoting the Bosveld, I just went out into the South African veld, and then I kept coming across these cell phone towers, and I thought, why not? It would be interesting, and it was a really interesting way of marking a certain time that I was moving through the landscape. Pierneef is obviously very well known for his trees. I did this project over a scope of, I started the project quite unrealistically, thinking I would just I'd just quickly gain access into all these different environments, like the Cape Town harbour, which was previously a pier, and this is all reclaimed land, right? So this used to be the ocean, and Pierneef painted the Lion's Head painting from the end of the pier, which was at the end of Adderley Street, which is now the Cape Town harbour, and it's become a much more industrialized area. So I had all these great expectations in 2007, 2008. I'll just go to the environment, find the shot, do it, project done, tick. Didn't work like that. And I ended up taking, the project is still work in process, and which is years later now. And so I started to look at how the land and how the landscape has shifted in time, and the light studies became metaphorical studies for time and for change. The project at the moment stands as two or three parts. The one part is this series of photographs. So these are the kind of original studies of taking his image and mapping out the parts of the one image that I found. So this is the Hermanus Old Harbour as a diptych, so these are printed onto fiber paper. That's Table Mountain. As you've seen before, Premier Mine, the Johannesburg, Bosveld Transvaal, Heidelberg. So when I was traveling around Neisner, I came back home the one day, and my flatmate told me there was someone in the lounge that I just absolutely had to meet. and I ended up meeting Carl Becker, and to my absolute surprise, Swartberg Pass, Carl Becker and I were working on exactly the same project. This is Hartbeespoort Dam. And so we collaborated in 2012, and we ended up having an exhibition together at the Stellenbosch Museum and the Stellenbosch University Gallery, excuse me. And we had this exhibition which we entitled Ons Land, Our Land, the Johannesburg Station Panels Revisited. It's called Ons Land, Our Land because it's a quotation of the cigarette cards that you used to collect of landscape paintings. We had this exhibition, we made this catalogue, and we had this exhibition, and our show toured to many places around the country after it opened in Stellenbosch University Gallery in 2012. And it closed at the Olivenhuis Arts Museum in Bloemfontein, and then we each went on to further develop our projects independently. And as it stands at the moment, I have these prints and the digital photo frames, or the digital work of the moving stills, which I also broke down into these sort of studies of shifting light and studies of perspective, which were kind of similar to David Hockney's work of moving through the landscape and seeing how perspective shifts. These are some of my favorite works. I became quite fascinated with the clouds, obviously, because this is one of the really key elements in Pierneef's work. So he made me really observe the clouds, but at the same time I was going through a difficult time at home with my father wasn't well, and so like Alfred Stieglitz, I started to turn to the clouds, and I became really fascinated with the clouds. Pierneef often had these massive cloud formations above his work, above his sites. So he would have these massive cumulonimbus cloud formations above the environment. But as I spent years and years traveling around Namibia and South Africa looking for these sites, never once did synchronicity happen that I got there and the sight and the clouds and the essence and the light was all there for me. Pierneef made me work really hard. But I did go and visit him at his gravesite in Pretoria, and I asked him permission to do this work, and I told him it was me that was following him around, introduced myself, and then I was driving between Joburg and Cape Town, and I just got exposed by hundreds of these amazing cloud formations, and I very naughtily pulled my cell phone out and was photographing out of the window with my crappy little Nokia, as I was driving between Cape Town and Joburg and my little Corsa Light, zooming down the N1. And that project has developed itself as a project on its own, which I'll speak to in a little while. But the last point I want to make is that what I was confronted by in the paintings and what I found in reality were two totally different things, and I'm very, very, very grateful for the experience of tracing Pierneef steps around the country and to continue to do so, because I think I've got about 3 more sites to visit, and this country is ever changing.